don't buy my book, that's fine. Just buy a book. So, you want to start?
All right. So my name is. Do I sit?
Yeah.
So my name is Natalia. Many of you know me as Natalia Lisi, or Natalie Lisi as we were in high school, but it's really Natalia Reland. And I was asked to be one of the people who introduced Toonie tonight. And it was something that I thought about, but then I thought, I can't not do this. And I really wanted to be able to say some words about the impact not only this person, but this book has had on my life. Toonie was my best friend in the world in 4th grade. And I spent many beautiful days with her in her home, and she was at mine, and we grew up in a community with the idyllic name of Golden Valley. And we would be remiss without mentioning the community and some of the people that were mentioned in the book as a transition to where it brings us today. There's a chapter in the book following the one about Lincoln, and we can't get together with a bunch of Golden Valley people without mentioning Lincoln, at least for a moment. But following the story about Lincoln, Toonie, Cynthia and I were talking about this today. Toonie mentions an experience she had with her Liza Minnelli haircut. And I remember that incident like it happened yesterday. I remember that haircut that Toonie, those of you will read the book, but it's a story about how Toonie came to school one day with this really cool haircut. But as we were in, 6th or 7th grade, we were children, we didn't have our vocabularies, we didn't have, wisdom. And many of us called it weird and called it strange. If we could look at that today, we'd probably say something like, she's exotic, she's mysterious, she's so cool.
Go ahead, say it.
I just did. But that was exactly at the time that Toonie started to fade out of our lives as children. And she was in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. She faded out. She faded fast. She started to go to the Minneapolis Children's Theater for her performance classes and began to be involved in dance in the Twin Cities. And though she came to school for a couple hours every morning, the rest of the time she was performing on various stages in town, and we saw her there. And so the book brings us a lot of clarity, a lot of understanding of why things evolved the way that they did. And Toonie burst back into our lives about a year ago. And when I say burst, I mean she exploded back in when she showed up with me in Berlin to support Ukrainian refugees, as we both have Ukrainian heritage. It was a remarkable way to reconnect with her. So it brings it full circle. And I think that I want to be able to say that your book brought a lot of healing, not just obviously to yourself, but to all of us. And I'm grateful for it. So we were given a list of words here to kick off this discussion so that you can hear from Toonie.
Are you guys ready for this?
Here we go.
Before we start, I just want to say too, I have done a couple events already. Being here in Minneapolis is a whole different ball of wax for me, and I wasn't expecting it. And I have a really cute short story to tell you. So I went to visit someone that's a friend of the family's who happens to live on Lake of the Isles. So I'm driving over here, and of course, Lake of the Isles was my home. And I'm driving by my grandmother's water fountain, which is at Dean Parkway in the lake. And I'm turning past my grandmother's house, and the new owners are there outside. So of course I'm going, the wrong way. I immediately jackknife into the parking spot, roll down the window, and I'm like, "You're in my grandma's house." Anyway, one thing leads to another, and of course I come out. It's a husband and wife. I haven't seen this house since the side lots next to it are now built on 2 houses in the side lots that used to be there. Much of my life is in the book, was in my grandmother's house. And they were the sweetest people, and they're like, the energy in this house is so peaceful. We feel your grandmother here. I mean, it was just the perfect of course I'm telling them, I can't stay, I can't come in. Oh, you wrote a book, so I run to my car and I give them a book. And it's like I gave them $1 million. They were just like, because at this point I've already told them the book is, or the stories of my grandmother are abundant in the book. So it was just a beautiful moment to have on the way here, and thought I'd share that with you. Yeah, so thank you, Minneapolis.
All right, let's go to the questions.
Sure.
All right. We know many authors come into actually publishing a book in all sorts of ways. What was your journey into becoming an author, and have you been a lifelong writer?
I have not been a lifelong writer. Do you guys want to hear the answer? Yes. Okay, so as you know, I danced all my life, and that was 1,000% the way I expressed everything, not only my creative life, but my personality, my emotions, everything went into dance. The accident that I had at 55, go ahead, talk to me. Oh, perfect. Thank you. It's really my bad side though, so I kind of wanted it. My accident really took all movement off the plate for me, and I've been a mover and shaker all my life. It was a big deal. And the drugs that I was on during that time also kind of messed with me. So I was left sort of bedridden in a town that we had just moved in, so I knew no one. And I was just, who am I? What am I doing? The whole identity that I had shaped and relied on and used as a coping mechanism had just vanished in a minute. So my little fingers are sticking out of my splints, and eventually once I got off the drugs, I started to write. And I've had a lot of conversations with people about this. I think that when you are someone that either relies heavily on your creative life, you call yourself a creative, you enjoy the arts, whatever, it seamlessly transfers, I think, depending on what's available to you. And so the writing, I was not a strong writer in high school or ever, but it just became a source of identity for me. So there wasn't a lot of preparation or schooling. I happen to be in a writing class now, and I'm learning so much. I'm like, oh, outline, that would have been interesting if I did that. So yeah, but it definitely saved me, and I highly recommend it. How's that?
I like it.
Cool.
I liked when you shared that story with me earlier, that you said someone brought you a laptop and you just couldn't stop. And that gave you that way to communicate. Okay, we know many authors, oh, I already said that. Do you consider dance to have, well, you've kind of answered this, do you consider dance to have been the main resource or coping mechanism you employed navigating your childhood? Maybe you can share that a little more with us. And does dance still play a role in your life in that way today?
So this woman walking in right now, hi Anne-Marie.
Hi.
I used to dance with her at the Minnesota Jazz Dance Company. And the woman she's about to sit next to, I also danced with at the Minnesota Jazz Dance Company. So we're talking late 70s. And at that time, yes, dance was absolutely my conduit for everything, for my surviving in the world. But it was also, it was very dissociative. And while I was never the best dancer on the stage, ever, I was always, okay, whatever. It's relative, it's certainly subjective. I was so locked in on stage that the world vanished. And I talk about it in the book a little bit. I would have out-of-body experiences when I was dancing. It was just that important.
And the second part of the question was, does dance still play a role in your life? in that way today?
Totally dance in my basement. But you know, the one thing that it's always been present in one way or another, especially when, of course, I had my dance studio, and that was actually really interesting because I talk about it too in the book. I really backed myself back into dance. I had really left it behind with all the children. 5 kids is a lot. I don't recommend it. The book is not funny, so I'm really surprised I'm being funny, because I'm really not funny in the book. But anyway, you know, it was such a love-hate relationship for me that when I finally saw a ballet bar in a biking studio where I was spinning all the time, right? I literally, asked the owner, can I just play around in this bar, maybe when you're closed or whatever? And then the first time I did it, I just normal clothes, put my hand on the bar and started moving, and I thought, I'm not really here, I'm just kind of pretending. But it was immediate, it was like getting back on the bike, or all those things that you do without thinking, chewing gum, tapping your head, whatever that happens to be, painting, drawing, I don't know, but it's my language, for sure.
I do remember seeing you dance in high school, and I remember watching you dance thinking, what is this incredible movement? What is happening? It was really something to watch.
Thank you, Natalia.
Okay, my last question, then we go to Cynthia. Toonie, one thing that immediately stands out in your memoir is your writing style. I believe you have been told this more as folks are reading it. Could you speak about how your writing style developed or your general thoughts about it?
Yes, I can. So, as I said earlier, I wasn't a trained writer or someone that studied the art of writing. And when I'm writing, I'm as much, if not more, watching and paying attention to the rhythms and the patterns of the words. And I can't not pay attention to that. So that is my writing style. And when I first, it was my accident and recovery kind of led into COVID. And so I landed in a writing group that was out of LA. And the woman that was leading that immediately was like, you must be a dancer because your words are dancing on the page. And that's really, I think, what happened is that I just transferred all the experience and knowledge of moving and paying attention to rhythms and patterns and movement in general, and that became the words I chose and the structures of the sentences. So I can't help it. And if you're not into rhythm, then you probably won't like the book. But it is a thing. It's just, I can't help but write like that.
Okay, well, hi everybody.
I just want to say, and if you listen to the book, I don't know if you all know that there's an Audible version out too.
So I did audio. I'm Audible, you guys, and that was amazing to do. I highly recommend that too. But I knew the book so well that when I went to record it, and I recorded it in Martha's Vineyard, which was a total gift, because a lot of the book, it lands in Martha's Vineyard as well. It just flowed. I did 200 pages in a day, which is kind of unheard of. And I stood through the whole thing, and I, swayed and did all the things. And the guy that recorded it, he's actually a music producer, so he's, he toured with Carly Simon, and he did her audiobook, and he's got that kind of experience. And he just looked at me at the end of the day, he's like, who are you? But I just knew, it was just so easy. And I actually think that the theater experience was a large factor in the ease in that, because, once you're on the stage, right? Anyway, so yeah, get Audible, because I even sing in it. Buy the book and get Audible, but that was instructed by Natalia.
Okay, hi you guys. My name is Cynthia Iverson. For those who don't know me, I've known Toonie with Natalia and going through school. See some GVHSers here, so thanks you guys so much for coming on. I know it means a lot to me, and it's an honor for me to be up here with Toonie, and I know it means a lot to Toonie as well. Sorry about that. About buying the book. This is an amazing book. It's Toonie's first book. It is a hard read at times. It's very emotional. And so I know people that picked up this book and they dove right in and did not put it down until they were done reading it in like whatever hours. I know people that have picked up this book and they can only read a section or so or a few pages at a time because they're absorbing the information, they're absorbing their feelings, relatability or whatever. And you know, I don't know, but if it takes you 3 hours, 3 days, 3 years to read this book, or download the Audible, just please give it a try because she'll make you proud, trust me. My questions are a little more dealing with the deep, emotional, hard structure to discuss. I feel that we're all very lucky in this fact that Toonie is so open and honest with her delivery and story, right? So she's already done the hardest work. So try, you know, I don't know, we're just gonna talk a little bit more about how the emotions come into play as to how writing basically, what do we say, transform Toonie, right?
Sure.
All right, let's see. Well, I had a different storyline on that, but then we'll go the other way. Okay, so ready?
Mm-hmm.
I think I called writing your salvation, really, is what it was. Okay, here we go. Toonie, can you speak about the concept of forgiveness? How were you able to arrive at that threshold given the circumstances you'd experienced? Were you able to get there with both of your parents? And can you talk about the conflicting feelings you had toward your parents? So it's kind of a triple whammy.
So, just kind of curious how many people in the room have read the book already. So, those of you that haven't read the book, I hope this won't discourage you from reading the book. You know, there are a lot of tough issues in the book. These are issues that more commonly end up not being talked about and not being shared within family systems, not to mention outside of your family systems. When I began writing, I was not writing with the intent of publishing. And when I began writing, because of the circumstances, for whatever reason, the first things that came pouring out were my childhood, right? As far as the concept of forgiveness, I think it's extremely important. I've talked often in the recent past about an author I met named Sophronia Scott. She's a professor, she's an author, and she spoke at a book festival that I went to recently in Woodstock, New York. She is a Sandy Hook parent, and which has nothing to do with her book. Her book is historical nonfiction. But it came up in a panel discussion that I was attending, and at the time of Sandy Hook, the horrible incident at Sandy Hook, her son was in 3rd grade in lockdown and lost his godbrother, one of his best friends. And when she was speaking about the incident during the panel, it was a very interesting and compassionate conversation, but there was not any talk about forgiveness. And instead of raising my hand and bringing it up, I didn't have the courage to do that at the time. I did go and speak with her afterward. And I said, hey, you know, I really am interested in your take on forgiveness. And because I've done a lot of work in that area, personally. And she said that she really didn't do anything publicly because she is a public figure. She's also, I think, like a lay minister or something. She teaches in like Sunday schools and things like that. But afterward, after the Charlottesville incident, Roxane Gay had written an essay that was pretty well known. And Roxane Gay spoke a lot about her contempt for the man behind the wheel of the car, how there would never be forgiveness in her eyes, and, you know, kind of trailing all of the massacres into one, sort of in that essay or whatever, her feelings about it. And so Sophronia Scott wrote an essay in response to Roxane Gay's article and why she had it wrong. And she said that had she not been able to forgive, I forget the man's name, she would have really been carrying her own response, her own emotions and triggers and darkness, and she would have been unable to not have that be present in the way she was going to raise her son and the way she wanted her son to survive and heal. And she compared it to sort of like this burden of anger and you know, inability to forgive as the tiger within us, right? This tiger that stalks us and becomes almost this presence in everything that we do, even if we don't want it to be, even if we're trying courageously to not acknowledge it, but it's there, right? It's almost like a grudge, and when you hold a grudge, as hard as you try to sort of present yourself to someone that you hold a grudge with, there's a giveaway, right? There's something in our body language, in our gestures, in our thoughts that influence who we are in those moments. She did not want to be that mom. She did not want to be that parent. And so for her, her ability to forgive allowed her to release, to let the tiger out the door and to put her best foot forward, raising her child and being who she wanted to be moving forward in the world, right? And I agree 1,000 million gazillion percent that, okay.
And
So,
an intermission.
so I'll tell you this, I'll tell you what's happening in a second, but just so that you know, sorry, I'm a little distracted. So, all of us suffer, right? In one way or another, we all have challenges, and I will never be able to tell you how you suffer because I'm not you. I know my experiences, and I will, sorry, isn't that annoying though when you hear that? and the thing about it is suffering is all-inclusive. It does not discriminate, right? But the work that we do internally is available to all of us as well. And that's where I want to lean. So that's my take on forgiveness. Now this super annoying distraction that's actually a really nice thing is I have a sister here who's in the back row supporting me, and I also have a sister in Texas who asked if she could call in and be a part of the event. And that's what this phone call is. And just to let you know, not only is she calling in, but she's in the hospital, and she's on the recovering side of necrotic fasciitis, which is one of the most evil things any human being could ever experience. So not only is she past the moment of where she was fighting for her life, but she's fucking supporting her sister in a little book event in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And she even wants to say a few words, so we're gonna try to do this. We're gonna try to put the mic.
Yeah, hey Jessica.
Hey
can you hear
Jessica,
us?
let's do a sound check.
I'm here.
All right.
It's
Wow.
working.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Is that to me?
Yeah, you're on.
Well, I did. Okay, so I guess you mean I have the floor then?
Yes, you
Yeah,
do.
we just finished a question about the concept of forgiveness where Toonie was talking about, she was starting to get to the idea with both your parents and feelings towards parents, and so having a family interlude here is appropriate.
Sure, probably a good break. Yes, there's some very challenging subjects that are throughout Toonie's book. I wanted to call for a few reasons. One, because this is as much my hometown as it is Toonie's. The location of tonight's gatherings is very, very important, and so much for her to have all of you here to support her in her new book and in the dawn of her new book. This book of Toonie's, I think, is such a special, brave exposure of her heart. I don't know how many of you out there have read her book already, but it took tremendous courage for her to write this. She wrote this, I think it was started at a rather low point in her life following her bike accident, when she discovered, when she wasn't able to dance anymore, she discovered that she could put words together in a very lovely, unique, and meaningful way, and that's how this story evolved. I think also, as an addition, and this is something that I can relate to where I am, when you are housebound or, stuck in being a hospital for a while, you start to do a lot of thinking, you start to have a lot of introspection, and I think that this was a time for Toonie to probably face some demons that she never really addressed before, and I think that's what's been happening in this novel. Obviously, some tough subjects are revealed here. Some things that we had to address, and I also wanted to provide my own voice because I was certainly there for part of it. I can certainly back up, a lot of what Toonie has had to say because as her sister, I experienced, a lot of the same things. We shared a lot of memories. Toonie and I were sort of in this situation of being kind of lumped together in our family. We have an older brother, we have an older sister, and growing up, I kind of remember Jordan and the girls, and so I guess it was just sort of, this thing that Toonie and I had sort of a common bond then. But one thing that's been really special to both of us, Toonie backed me up on this, is that probably in the last 5 years or so, Toonie and I have reconnected in a really, really special way. We are much, much closer now than we probably have been in years. We talk long talks. I think I spoke to Toonie as she was driving through the state of Wisconsin yesterday. I think I spoke with her through at least a third of the state. Because we just start talking and we don't seem to stop. We both seem to have a lot to say. But as returning to the book a little bit, it took a tremendous amount of courage for Toonie to write these things, facing evils, facing difficult subject matters. But many of you out there I know Toonie. She's raised 5 children. She's accomplished so much in her life, and I know has more to accomplish out there. And I suspect this will be the first out of probably several books that she's writing. She's thirsting to write, for sure. I spoke to her this afternoon and I asked her what she was doing, and she said I was writing. So something else I'm sure many of you know about Toonie is that when she decides to do something, she does it with great passion, with great zeal, and great energy. And this writing, which is a new part of her life, a relatively new part of her life, is something that I think is just simply going to grow. And I wanted to express to all of you over the phone, since I obviously can't be there, just how enormously proud I am of her for her efforts. To turn a leaf like this, at our I don't want to say advanced age, but, but at the same time, we're in our 60s, to be able to, forge yourself into
Cut that woman
things
off.
commendable. So there I am. That's probably the gist of what I have to say. I support Toonie completely in what she does, and I love her very much. So that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Jessica.
So does anybody want to know how the cover came to be?
Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you should tell everybody what the book is about. I think you should sum up for the people who haven't read it. I think to you, like as the author, it's not about dancing, even though What is it about?
You know, the book is about experiencing a lack of boundaries in my house that a young girl would never be able to understand, right? So in that sense, it was about dance, because dance got me through it. But you have to, I mean, everyone knows this. When you're a child, you normalize and you accept everything within your family systems as normal, which I did. So, and to be honest, and I had some other situations that grew out of that because I became someone that had no self-worth and, you know, decided I could sabotage myself as well as other people had sabotaged me, right? But I don't know where I was going with that, except for the fact that it just became so much of the creative person. So it wasn't all ugly, because it also showed me great beauty. And I always chose to focus there as much as I could. But back to the cover. So I had started, but thank you, Karen, for pointing that out. I had started the writing, and I had started posting some of my writing on Facebook. And so everyone, just FYI, you can post the cutest picture of a dog and get 500 likes, and you can post writing that takes you a really long time to like figure out, and you'll get 1 like. And that's Facebook, and that's totally fine. But I would notice every once in a while this amazing artist that I knew would like my writing. I was like, oh my gosh, I know that person. And then fast forward, I sign a contract with She Writes Press, and there's very specific rules about covers, and they have a cover designer and all of those things. And I immediately reached out with absolutely no, there was nothing in the world that would have made me think this would actually happen. But I reached out to Steven Rydberg, who was the artist in residence at Children's Theater, and asked if there was any way in the world he would consider doing a book cover. He said yes. So not only did he do the cover, but he was the first person that read the book. And when he agreed to do it, he said, send me the first 40 pages. And I didn't actually know this at the time, but he had already done other book covers. And so he had said, you know, it's kind of a known in the industry, you should be able to create the book cover out of the first 40 pages. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna read the first 40 and we'll get a cover. And I was terrified to send it to him because no one had read it yet. So I sent, and I happened to be in Martha's Vineyard at the time. And so I sent him the first 40 pages, and I was editing like mad, again, for the 1000th time, before I sent it to him. And he came back probably within 24 hours, and he said, send me the next 40. And I was, of course, overwhelmed with gratitude, because, like I said, it was the first person to have read it, and I've loved his work since I was 11 years old. To that point, at one point while I was in theater school, I had handed him my one diary and said, would you sketch in my diary? And I still have that page and that diary today. And so it's a huge full circle for me to have his artwork and his genius on my book. And he is here today.
Hi.
That's
Thank you for the flattering words.
oh
Who wouldn't have done the cover after the first 40 pages?
no.
You do have a verve, you do have a style. It was a no-brainer.
Still pinching myself.
And I don't know if anybody else lives for coincidence, but I had been working on this image of a shelf for 2 months before our first correspondence. And that's how that happened.
Amazing. Well, not only that, so at one point I think I had said to you, we talked a little bit about imagery. So certainly shells, ocean, water was a big thing. But I'd also confessed that I'd done a little drawing of a woman's face with the mouth erased from the face. And I thought it could have gone in either direction. I would have been thrilled. Stephen actually did do a version of that, which is stunning. It's breathtaking. And so, fingers crossed, the hope is that we have to have a second edition with a different cover on it. Because it's...
I don't know if that happens.
I don't know either. But it's just, it's incredible. It's such a beautiful, beautiful image. And not only is it beautiful, not because it looks like me, but it actually resembles what I look like at that age. It's really beautiful. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, too.
Did you feel you had your question answered about the story?
Well, I just wanted, I didn't mean to, I think that it's about so much more than that, but it's not my place to say.
Well, I've done a lot of book clubs, right? In the last 2.5 weeks, I've actually sat in front of a lot of people. And what is happening a lot is people are kind of floored about what I've put out there. And that actually didn't hit me till Minneapolis, because you knew my parents. You knew my parents. I danced with you. Like, this is really vulnerable, right? So up until now, it's kind of been okay. And I lost it today, and Jessica knew that because I lost it on the phone with her earlier. But what it has done is it's allowed other people to say, oh, I can talk about something that happened to me. And that has been the real gift of it, is that I feel so strongly, and I'm a little angry about how it's so easy to not fucking talk about these things, because it's hard. It is hard. And the word, for example, rape is so commonplace now. Like even this last Trump news, and how he can just casually say, I didn't rape her. Like, fuck you for even saying that. Like, it just, I'm sorry about my language, but if you've read my book, you're over it. And even Stephen liked it, and those F-bombs, there was probably more when he read it. But anyway, so I just feel like, for example, there's been a lot of Instagram reviews, which are great, but I think the whole thing is malarkey. But anyway, so I started having an offline conversation with one of the Instagram reviewers because she loved the book, and it's all, what ended up happening was her review got suspended off of Instagram, and she was suspended because of language in her review. And I did just get a really cute meme from someone that said, if you publish a book in Florida and it's banned, good for you, or something like that. But anyway, so we were having this conversation, and she ended up telling me that she works in the criminal justice system, and because of my book, she has given my book to all of the victim advocates that she works with. And I just thought, that's amazing, right? Because in the end, the whole point is not to sensationalize the circumstances, but to empower people to open their mouths and heal. And forgiveness is a big part of it, because at some point you have to let go of what's happened. If you really feel, in my opinion, if you're gonna move, if you really want to thrive and be more attracted to the light and the beauty and all of those things. Questions?
Well, getting back to the conversation about this concept of forgiveness, and the question on then, were you able to get there with both of your parents? Was the second part of the question, right? In a way, and then, and can you talk about the conflicting feelings you had toward your parents?
Well, I think the conflicting feelings are supernatural because I think you want to love your family, right? And you want to believe that everything that's being offered to you is in your own best interest. So you want to invest in that, even though there might be this gut feeling that's like something's icky or something's not right. So there's that. I didn't necessarily, I got as much as I was ever going to get out of my father. He was not someone that navigated the world with his emotions forward. And I got to that point where that I understood that, and that was fine. And I don't believe that he didn't suffer. I think he did. As far as my mom, we had an amazing final 2 years together, and I know that she deep down was extremely sad and sorry about a lot of things. And she may not have exactly said the words, but we got to a place where there was an understanding. And that was great.
Did you talk to her about writing?
About,
The writing?
oh yeah, and she had read a couple things. For example, there's a section in the book because my mom got COVID, that ended up in an anthology called COVID Monologues, which is a different publication. And so my submission ended up in that, and she read that and thought that was sensational. Moms. But the thing about it is, like today when I was speaking to my sister, she's like, I support you, and your peeps are there and they love you, because I was super upset. And the thing is, who I wanted? I wanted my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think there's a part of us that kind of always wants that, like it doesn't matter how much you fuck up, like you still want your mama. So, yeah. But I think we should open it up to if anyone else has questions, because I feel like we're kind of getting past everyone's bedtimes. How about it? Yes? No? Brave souls? Yes, Katie.
Where in the process did you decide on the title?
Underwater Daughter. So one thing I learned I've learned a lot. I know even now more since I'm in a writing class. But I think the percentage is really high, like 85% or something of all titles that come to a publisher are changed. A working title, right? They all look at it and go, no, we'll fix it. The original title, my working title, was The Beauty Within, which resonated but didn't really pop. It was a little bit, easy. So my publisher read the first 40 pages and kind of pulled out keywords. And it was a long list of words, but Underwater Daughter was what I came up with out of, a list of 100 words. And as soon as I put the two words together, again, the rhythm just meant everything. And I thought, oh, that's really beautiful together. I hope it matches the theme of my story. No, but yeah, it's obviously a very much a mother-daughter story. And there's a ton of water and sea imagery throughout the whole thing. So.
But not to hog. So
No, please.
A lot of questions. It's great. So I think about my experiences growing up, and I think a lot about how I look forward to now how I'm parenting Toonie that my daughter today. And I'm curious, you've got 5 kids, and maybe you process this later, but how do you think? Were you conscious about your experience and how it affected how you parented your 5 kids? Good, bad, good, different?
100%. And that goes back to, kind of the tiger, because as much as I was trying very hard to be very open and very authentic with my children, because a lot of, I think, real growth happened after my accident, I was still carrying around a lot of body language and inner stuff that we're not as aware of that impacted my relationships to my kids, to the point that, and I talk about this in the book, because there was an incident when I was 14, right? It was a pretty nasty incident. And a lot of that, like I don't remember when I first told my sister, but it was years later. It was not right. I didn't tell anyone about it. I just stuffed it down and on I went. But when my oldest turned 14, I lost it. I'm already 14 years in being a parent, and all of a sudden I see my son at 14 going, that's how old I was? Like, that's when that happened? It just didn't even register. So there's a lot of things that until you really unsurface them, is that a word? I make up words a lot too. And that just goes, I mean, I'm so not a rule follower, and if anyone is a fan of Rick Rubin, I'm like, I think he's the gospel. But anyway, if you don't know who Rick Rubin is, ask me later. As far as raising my kids, I just feel as though I've always said, I make so many mistakes. I'm doing my best, but I don't know it all, and I'm still figuring it out, and I think they appreciate that. But my main concern with my kids was keeping them safe, you know. So I think that that's a good number one priority. But did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Can I say, I thought that was a really powerful part of your book, how you said that each child, when they turn 14, that's when you told them, not knowing whether it would burden them or free them.
I still don't know.
That was really powerful.
I still don't know, and the fact is, every single one of them wept. Mm-hmm.
I talked to Maddie at the last Deignan wedding,
Which
your
is
daughter.
my third child.
And she told me about that, and in such a proud way. And she was just glowing about your writing and about how you shared that, and you know, so she is not ashamed of that experience with you, of knowing that at that age, and she shared it in a positive, powerful way.
Yeah, she's a good kid.
Yeah.
But you know, here's the thing too, as hard as we try as parents and thinking these are the right things to do, or you know, giving them as much information as we can, that didn't protect her. Right? And that's part of why I think the book is important, because the reason you still can't always protect your children is because there's so much silence out there, you know, and there's so many people that know what's going on and don't say anything, and that doesn't serve our children, and it doesn't serve the next generations. So the more I feel like these issues are talked about, as uncomfortable as we are, it's incredibly important. It's going to empower someone else. I can tap dance if you want. Not really. I mean, that's probably my least
I was
accomplished
scheduled to end
genre. Yes.
So it's 8 o'clock now, and it's 8 o'clock now, and the agenda did call for you to read from something from your book.
Mm-hmm.
Would you still like to do that?
No. Unless you really want me to. I'd be happy to do it if you want me to. Do you want me to read?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read it. It's actually, you know, I was like, do I go down and dirty? So I did pick out something.
Yep. Okay.
So this is when I have left Chicago and moved to New York because of a girl. Who has a good Southern accent? Hang on, yeah. My name is Kim. What's yours? The Southern twanged. She's Southern twanged right up to me. She heart pricked me. Soft face, dew blue eyes, dancered me. That's a made-up word, by the way. I had barely worked 2 years with Gus's company in Chicago when she persuaded me to join her and find dance work in New York. How did she persuade me? It was her accent, her nose, her smile, her sweet blonde hair. eyes that blinked like a Disney princess, skin as soft as love. I had a crush. Kim was apple pie-eyed, a junior teen pageant winner, a Southern Belle blonde with saucy blue peppers and a tiny pug nose. On first glance, I thought she was a soccer player or a gymnast. Her physique was more athletic than graceful, and she looked like she could beat the shit out of anything. But her accent handled coy, and her puffy pink glossed lips and soft-spoken charm hinted at dainty. She was a delicate wrecking ball. I moved to Midtown Manhattan and lived with her and another friend of hers in a small studio apartment. I slept underneath Kim's lofted bed in an actual closet, think Harry Potter, 9 floors above 31st Street. Oh shoot, sorry. Luigi's, Lynn Simonson, Broadway Dance Center, we trained with the legends. We swiped on eye makeup, slogged on spandex, and raced the early morning New York City grid life to get to ballet and jazz classes on time. Oh, that's out there. 42nd Street, Dream Girls 9, Women of the Year. I auditioned for all of them. How tall are you going to say you are? I whispered to whomever stood nearest. We numbered in the hundreds, in nude legs and high-cut neckline plunging leotards, black-heeled character shoes. Dancers left dejected as groups were halved and quartered. Kim and I never went for the same gig. I usually ended up in a final cut, worked over, exhausted, maybe 3 of us on stage, our hands slipping off of our hips, our smiles fake. Someone will call you by tomorrow morning, we heard from several rows back in a darkened house. I got a job at Studio 54. I was a Studio 54 go-go girl, for fuck's sake. The lines to get in snaked over, we're talking the 80s here. The lines to get in snaked over long, pissed-on, liquored-on sidewalks for blocks every night of the week. If you were fast, sexy, or cash-heavy, the bouncers might cut you in. I'd show up for work in the afternoon while the cleaners were still scrubbing the stench and liquor slop from the previous night's debauchery. On their knees, they scoured the dance floor where likely someone had puked, passed out, or come. Slunked in the back corner of the bar, hazy young punks were hunting down smokes or snorts before finally heaving themselves out the door. Get the fuck out of here, scums, they might have heard on their way out, and I felt bad for them. Go home, I prayed. A little more?
Sure.
Okay.
That's a good one.
I was go-go on a box. It was the 80s. Sequined tops and lame bell-bottoms, scarves and platform boots, and wide elastic belts. I never remembered the lyrics of the songs the DJ played. I still don't. But I knew the riffs and rhythms, bass lines, and backbeats. Some nights they moved me from the go-go box to the catwalks upstairs. Over the guests dancing below, I curled my flesh into candy cane twists, knotted my body into pretzel bows. I glittered in bras and shiny shorts. The disco balls turned slowly. Marvin Gaye, Donna Summer, sexual healing. I am going to stop here, but I just want to say that, well, I don't remember what year it was, but my sisters and I and my oldest daughter at the time, Odessa, and my mother took a trip to New York. It would have been in, I think, early 2000s, mid-2000s. We ended up, among other things, we saw the New York City Ballet, or maybe ABT. We went to see Cabaret on Broadway, starring Neil Patrick Harris and Natasha Richardson. May she rest in peace. And it was sensational. And it was also at the newly refurbished Studio 54 Playhouse, which I didn't realize until I got there. And talk about the Twilight Zone. I walk in and we have balcony seats. So we're going up the stairs to the balcony, which was the same pink cheetah carpeting. And I literally, the room was spinning. I was so freaked out by it. And I'm holding this, she's young, Odessa was, I don't know, 9, something like that. we go up to the balcony and we're sitting down and I'm literally right in front of the disco ball. Like, it was incredible. So, yeah, that's how that came full circle. So, yeah, that's it. That's where we end.
So
I will
thank you
not-
everyone for coming, everyone from all walks of Toonie's life. I saw there was a display of the books up towards the front of the store. I know Toonie would love to sign them for you if you buy them here tonight. I'm wondering whether we might even be able to talk the artist of the cover to sign some books as well.
That's not a thing either, is it?
It 1000% is a